G'day, Ainsley here with more Cowbell Please. Well, it's been a tough week in the Christian music business. The media expose and the confession by Michael Tate of indiscretions have really rocked the Christian music world. But I do think there's a huge opportunity here to learn about the gospel of Jesus Christ, something that can actually help the church. So I'm going to say more about that. Stay tuned, make sure you subscribe. Today's episode is with Keith Everette Smith. Keith's had a wide and varied career as a session horn player, music director for TobyMac, producer, 3 #1 singles with his good wife Tasha Layton in recent months. He's got some amazing credits like playing on the Elvis movie, Baz Luhrmann's new one that was with Tom Hanks, and some amazing interactions with Jack White on some of his projects. Next week is Grammy-winning producer, writer, instrumentalist Chris Stevens. Chris is a producer of 5 TobyMac records, Mandisa, Sanctus Real, worked on DC Talk record. He's got a lot of great credits. Again, subscribe so you don't miss out. Now let's get back to Keith. Here we go. Hey, thanks for coming, man. It's awesome to have you in the studio.
I know, I love it.
Great starting out with friends. And I'm going to read your bio, and that'll just launch us off. I haven't read it.
I hope it's accurate.
It had Sean mixing U2.
Oh, neat.
He had mixed U2, and I'm like, you did what?
I might let a few of these roll by, though, if it's you too. Let's just let that happen.
Well, I can see some already coming up here that you might be like, okay, Keith Everette Smith is a Grammy and Dove Award-winning producer. Are you a Grammy winner?
I have played on 6 Grammy records, but I am not a Grammy winner. It's an important distinction, actually.
You have contributed to Grammy-winning recordings.
That is right.
Dove Award-winning producer,
Mm-hmm.
Trumpeter, multi-instrumentalist, arranger, songwriter, renowned for his dynamic contributions to contemporary Christian music and mainstream genres. A key member of TobyMac's diverse city band, Keith's trumpet and production work has energized arenas worldwide.
Wow. Surely they came to see me.
Reaching over 3 million fans during his 5-year tenure. Are you
10 years.
I was going to say, it's longer than 5.
I'll be 10 years in October.
His versatile career spans, and I'm interested to see how many of these are accurate, Grammy-winning projects with artists like TobyMac, Lauren Daigle.
I did vocal editing and some horn stuff here and there for Lauren.
Casting Crowns. You produced a track for Tasha.
That's right. That's one of the Dove Awards is working on that record, the 20th anniversary record. And I actually did a bunch of tracks when I was working with Bernie years ago.
Yeah, right. As well as mainstream icons like Jack White.
I did a bunch of sessions for Jack over 3 years.
Oh, we're circling back.
Okay. That was an
Dolly
awesome...
Parton.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Groban.
Mm-hmm.
Keith's production credits include 2 #1 CCM hits for his wife, Tasha.
3.
Okay.
3. There you go. 3. I'm actually glad to know AI, can make mistakes too.
You know what's great about AI? He presents such factual confidence.
Right. Yeah.
And half it's wrong. Look what you've done. And a third #1 single.
Worship Through It.
Worship Through It.
They
featuring
got us.
Chris Brown. His film and TV work includes arranging for Baz Luhrmann.
Not arranging. I played on the Elvis soundtrack.
The Elvis biopic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was
awesome. Is that the one that was just out, like the one with Tom Hanks?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was really fun.
I love that movie.
It was so good.
Kind of gave you a whole new view of the world. Clint Eastwood's Jersey Boys.
Mm-hmm.
And co-producing the 2016's People's Choice Awards.
The music. Me and Tim Davis.
Keith's faith drives his mission. He served as instrumental music director at Saddleback. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
California, 24,000 members. And worship director at Fellowship Bible in Brentwood. Keith and Tasha shared their expertise with orphaned Ugandan children at a music camp, teaching production and notation.
Now, that's wild that it knows stuff like that. But yeah, we went to Uganda and did a worship camp for the Watoto village.
A Dove Award winner on the Life Songs Casting Crowns anniversary record. Keith endorses, let's see how true this is, Bach trumpets.
Yamaha trumpets.
Roland keyboards.
Mm-hmm.
And Shure SM7B mics. See, where did you get that from? It's an
picking random stuff out.
It's a comment you made somewhere at some point.
That's right.
That it's picked up. That's a random endorsement.
Not the rest of it, just that mic.
Praising their versatility in the studio and trumpet work. Now, it is a great trumpet mic. Residing in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Thompson Station, actually. With Tasha and their children, Levi and Layla, Keith continues to shape CCM with his heart for worship and creative excellence. So there you go.
Oh, gosh, I want to meet that guy.
I know. It's a little bit of imposter syndrome when you read that stuff,
sure
isn't
is.
it?
You're like, oh.
So, mate, you've opened up all kinds of cans of worms that I'm going to come back to. I'm going to read that list because I want to hear some of those stories. So what I want to hear is story to now, life story in terms of, how it got you into music. Pivotal words, a teacher, a friend, a parent, or something that you remember, just things along the way that influenced you. Yeah, start from the beginning.
I'm a pastor's kid. My dad was a worship pastor in a church and then started pastoring, was a senior pastor for church in high school. And so we moved around a ton. My dad was in music. My dad's best friend played trumpet. It was one of those modern churches that had drums and things like that, early 80s. And I loved to draw when I was a kid, but all I did was draw musical instruments and superheroes. My mom said I started taking piano in third grade and never drew again, all in on music. And so it's all I ever wanted to do.
Did you have a good teacher? Or did you have someone who taught you actual music, or was it just about the dots and theory? And
I'm weird, dude. It kind of didn't matter to me, the teacher, because I'd go home and just play. I mean, I only took 6 months of piano. We moved away, but I did learn how to read bass clef, which was actually a big deal for later on, that one thing alone. It wasn't until I started in middle school with trumpet that I had the middle school band director, Miranda Burke. That was when it kind of lit up for me. Real good teacher, worked my tail off. That was the real season of learning, I would say. Playing music in church, I think one of the things that's sad about church now is no one could come up the way that I did. No one lets a 10-year-old play at church. Way before I should be, I'm playing in church, and I'd skip class and go to the band room and learn how to play a trombone. Picked up every instrument that I could to learn how to play. And someone donated some recording equipment to our church, a Mackie 24-channel mixer and a ADAT machine. So I just plugged them in and started reading articles on the earliest form of the internet. In some ways, it wasn't a great thing early on. All those magazines are horror stories. No one ever says you plug it in and put it in front of it. And that's 80% of being a good engineer is just placing a mic really well. But you read the stories of, we took that microphone and submerged it in water and did, they tell you all the really weird stuff. And so you think without a real mentor or anything, that's what recording is all the weird and hard stuff. And so, you hear things like saturation and distortion. And so you think you're going to crank stuff and to make them gross and ugly. And that's good. So I got to college. I went to Ohio State for 2 years and then transferred to Liberty and just started writing songs, playing in bands. I was an arranger. So in high school, my part-time job was writing marching band arrangements for our school and in other schools in the area and stuff. It's just I wanted to be a composer since I was in 7th grade. So got to school as well. I was working at a church in Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up. And ministry schedule and school schedule were just going like this. And I was burnt out and doing too much. So I dropped out of Ohio State and met a guy named Charles Billingsley. He used to be in a band called New Song. Charles heard me play one night at this conference and called me at midnight, on the dot, and said, "Hey, I just called Jerry Falwell and got you a full ride to go to Liberty." Okay, so decided to pick up and move to Virginia. And, Liberty was about all the people that I met. Those connections and people that I became friends with. And there's a shocking number of people from my era at Liberty that are still in the music industry or out and about doing it. And we're all kind of still friends. And Rick Warren brought his Purpose-Driven Conference to Liberty 2 years in a row. And my horn section that I had at school played with their band. And so became kind of friends with them. And so I was thinking about moving to LA or Nashville. I'd never been to California even ever. And so I called and said, "Hey, what's California like? Should I do this?" And my inquiry into that turned into a job as the instrumental music director at Saddleback Church. And so went out there, was working at the church, and there's all kinds of producers and songwriters and people who became, friends and mentors and kind of really got to see it up close. Another friend of mine, Alan Powell, a real close friend of mine.
What was Anthem Lights?
Anthem Lights. So Alan and I were real close in college. He moved out to LA at the same time. he had a friend, Chad, from high school. He wanted to make a record. And so Chad moved out, and Alan and I wrote the record. I produced it. Really good record. And Chad had always wanted to be in a boy band. And we made this really good record. And so we went to Liberty and auditioned like 10 guys and found dudes and put them in the band. So we formed Anthem Lights with Alan and then got them signed to Provident. And you worked on that record. And Seth Mosley did a lot of that. I came to town with them. I was like, what could be better than moving to town with a job, with stuff to do? I always said it was good to move to town to be able to offer people work instead of begging for it. You know, so to come with a project to work on was really good. So that was 2009. I ended up in Nashville, and that kind of started the whole thing.
So you've moved to town. What happens next? What are your highlights moving forward?
You know, I came in just really eager, you know, and I think I've been able to be relied upon, and I've always done really good work. I wanted the big opportunity to rise to the occasion. And there are some times that I think that maybe I tried to get a yes before it was my time. You know, you'd get a no. I've always wondered, like, it's such a fine line between going after something that's bigger than you and rising to the occasion, and also just kind of waiting your turn. And I was always just kind of like eager, trying to find it and do it, and had a lot of good yeses and some disappointing no's along the way. So I came to be a producer. Thought I'd be a drummer more than anything. I didn't consider Nashville to be much of a horn town with horns and sessions and stuff for horn players. And I joined a band called Denver and the Mile High Orchestra. Jeff Pardo was in DMHO. We didn't really overlap. We almost did. We did a few shows together and have since become good friends. So I started playing with Denver, and that turned into getting called for sessions as a horn player. So that's how Jack White came about. Was doing horn sessions and stuff. And a lot of my bigger credits are for as a horn player or arranger for different things. Jack was scheduled to do the score to The Lone Ranger. Johnny Depp was in that. So we did a bunch of sessions for the film and was really fun. And apparently Jack saw a cut of the film and hated it. And so he backed out. The rest of the score got sent to Hans Zimmer, but they still used all this stuff that we played in the film. So like I'm on Hans Zimmer film scores and stuff, you know, never met him a day in my life, but I'm
ultimate. Did you use the audio?
So yeah, they weren't overlapping, but there were like bar scenes and stuff in the film that we had cut things for and were playing over and stuff. Wow, it was kind of old Western, you know, obviously kind of stuff. It didn't get good ratings necessarily, but so maybe Jack was right. So I got called to do this session. Hey, I can't tell you who it is, but Peter Rotter, who's a big film score contractor in LA, he's actually doing it. So I was like, okay, it's a film. It's a big deal. It was at RCA. Dave Cobb was doing a lot of the music for it, who does Chris Stapleton and a bunch of amazing things. He was the one who was leasing out RCA, the big room there. So we show up, and it's just a bustling room full of everything going on. And there's a couple big gobos kind of separating some things, but just instruments everywhere. And you go in the control room, and there's mountains of old preamps from the 50s, just stuff they rented to be real era specific, and everything was going to tape. And I see this man standing there. He looks very wealthy and very in charge. And come to find out, it's Baz Luhrmann, you know. Wow. And so he's there, and I actually can't remember the guy's name. The guy who actually played Elvis in the film, he was there, and he's in a white shirt with like cigarettes up in his sleeve, like kind of playing the part. He's definitely kind of method acting these sessions and stuff. And I find out it's for this movie from Elvis, and it's going to be, I didn't know who was going to be in it otherwise, but ended up being Tom Hanks in the thing. And so all these musicians, and Baz had gone on YouTube and stuff and found different people who sounded like these artists, like Little Richard, who was a huge influence on Elvis. And so there was this guy who he found doing Little Richard covers who sounded just like him, who was hired to be in this film. And they were all there. So all the musicians were out playing in the live room together. And the first thing was Baz comes out, he circles everybody up, and just like a director, he said, no, we're going down Beale Street. He said, and boom, you hear a flash of R&B over here, and boom, you hear a flash of soul. He said, we're creating the soundtrack of Elvis's musical childhood. You're watching one of the greatest directors in the world treat you like an actor, and he's painting this picture like a director. It was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. Yeah, he's telling us, here's what we're doing, and getting us in the spirit of what we're about to do. And one of these vocalists She looked very old, but I come to find out she was in her 40s. She just had an old look to her. She lived in Nashville for a while. She lived in Alabama at this point. She was brought up to sing in the film. One of these songs was Beale Street Blues. It's just this old song that we were recording. And so, darling, like me, she was in the only one isolated are the vocalists in the other room. And so she goes and she's like, I could sing this kind of jazzy, kind of Creole. I could do this. And he said, darling, just whatever you want. And so she goes in, we cut one take of the song and everyone just applauds. She's like, so great. He says, darling, that's incredible. And she goes, you don't think I went too far? And he goes, darling, you could never go too far. It was like the most, oh my gosh, what am I seeing right now? Like this is
so good.
But he loved her so much, he put her in the film. She's an actress. Tragically, she passed away.
No.
Before the film actually came out. It was all over the news and stuff. But this woman who he had hired as a musician, put in the film, she passed away. I can't remember what from, but she was so sweet, but it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen was watching him direct us like that. And that one quote from what she said, darling, you could never go too far. It's so dope.
Oh, that is absolutely amazing. And I'm a fan of that movie.
Yeah, it was so good when I saw it and saw my name in the credits. It was fun. And that's when I got a call from my friend Craig Swift to play on Toby's record. Long story short, after several records, he said, hey, I need somebody for my band. Do you play other things? And I said, yeah, I play a lot of instruments. And got offered a job with him. I've been with him for 10 years. And
would you consider that your main gig?
No, I've always kind of considered producing my main thing. It is certainly a giant part of what I do. I think other people would probably think that that's my main thing, but it's the kind of job where like you go and someone else sets up my gear. I get to work really hard without my kids climbing all over me. So I get a lot done while I'm on the road. Right. So I love being on the road. I've learned so much about being in the studio and about songs and how they translate live. It's made me a better producer for sure. But I've always tried to make it to where production and songwriting is first.
So you're finding you're actually able to do production work when you're on the road?
Oh, yeah.
Overnight and then the bus and you just show up for sound check and gig and that's it.
Crazy thing about digital consoles and stuff, they pull up virtual sound check. We don't sound check. I don't have to be anywhere till
somebody line checked it.
They line check.
They line check it. You don't even have to show up till the gig. Is that
no? I grab a horn maybe before the show and warm up and grab a guitar and just kind of make I'm warm and
wow,
and that's it.
So good. I mean, when I started, there was nothing digital. No, we got a digital reverb. SPX 90 and some of those.
Did you play in bands and stuff?
I enjoyed doing the sound more than the playing.
Mm-hmm.
I had hair down here. It was hair band. Our band was called Clockwork. Our thing was, we're going to rock your socks off. That was I don't know what we were thinking. It was the 80s.
So good.
Of course, I had no idea about Nashville and what the potential was. I was producing records. I didn't know that was a thing. We were just recording things. And I think that's kind of one of the best ways to organically just start creating. Now, tell me the story. So what's the Jack White thing? Did you meet the man? Was he involved in it?
So my buddy Justin Carpenter, trombone player, keyboard player, used to play Plum a bunch. He went to Belmont, and I think the story is he's like on a street corner downtown Nashville and sees a buddy he went to school with who's an engineer. And he said, hey, you play trombone, right? And he said, yeah. He said, hey, I've got this session. I can't tell you what it is. Can you grab some horn players and show up at this address? And so my buddy Leaf Shires was the trumpet player on that. So they did a bunch of sessions they showed up and it was for Jack. And it was stuff that Jack was producing for other artists and stuff. Leaf ended up touring with Kelly Clarkson and had to turn down some of the sessions. And so I got a call, to step in, and Vance Powell was engineering those and stuff. And it was all to tape, just a big open room with no baffles between anybody, just playing music. And he had this closet in the corner that was just all these little amps, like a Blues Junior and a Hog and just little things that with these little analog tape echoes and stuff, and all just bleeding into one another with 57s and stuff into it, that they would just feed stuff into this room, and it was going it was so fun. Like so fun. And he's really sweet, like really kind. One of the coolest things, we were sitting at this Neve desk, and he said, wait, what was that? And he would solo up something. He soloed something up when I was dude's like, yeah, dude, there were more curse words than that. Having a dude like that compliment something you're doing was quite a highlight.
What's the Dolly Parton one?
Dolly Parton was actually part of a cool story. My buddy Drew was the drummer, percussionist for Chicago for a while. Tristan Bowden, who was drumming for Chicago, got lung cancer. Tris was Drew's drum teacher or mentor, like when he was growing up. And so they had Drew fill in with Chicago for a year while Tris was getting healthy. And then when Tris came back, Drew stepped into percussion. In case Tris needed to go take a break, Drew would just go get on the kit and things like that. And so they were coming to town to make a Christmas record with Phil Ramone. Phil Ramone was producing Chicago. I knew Drew was coming to town to do this record. They did it at Sound Kitchen. And so I'm headed to church Sunday morning, and he calls me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm heading to church." He said, "Get over here right now." And so I said, "Well, I'm going to church." He said, "Okay, well, as soon as you get over, stop over here and say hello." And so I go sit in the back of the room, back of Big Boy. And he said, "Okay, so I've already got you editing the record. You're here, but like, there's a chance we could mix this record." They didn't love the mixer who did the last record. And they looked over at me and said, "Drew, do you want a shot?" He said, "Yeah, if my buddy Keith can come do it with me." So we set up in C, and I watched one of my favorite producers produce one of my favorite bands for 3 weeks.
Phil Ramone
producing Chicago
at Sound
Kitchen for 3 weeks. And so we're in C on the SSL there. So we set up, and it was really funny. I'd worked with some guys in LA that really taught me about file management and how to label it a tape reel and things like that. And then you start getting into file transfer things and just knowing how important it was. These guys had no idea. This is where the horn players from Chicago learned you could tune horns. And so they go in a room and do things that they've never done before that didn't, Chicago, like those horns sound amazing. And so files started to get running every which way. And, it was kind of wild, but it was really fun. And then Phil'd come in at the end of the night with a glass of bourbon and just tell me stories. And I had read his book like 6 months before. And so hearing the man tell the stories that I had read in the book and how they'd put like Billy Joel's drum kit up on this giant riser, the resonance underneath. I was just the coolest thing ever. And Dolly Parton was a guest on that record.
To me, the bigger credit is Chicago.
Absolutely.
And Phil Ramone.
For sure.
I mean, I love Dolly, don't get me wrong, but dang, Phil Ramone?
It was one of the coolest things ever.
Wow. What year was that then?
2010.
That is cool. I did get to work at the Sound Kitchen on a record, Michael Narada Walden. He produced on the Bodyguard soundtrack. Michael Narada Walden is a very interesting character. He's one of those, he likes those caps. I don't even know what you call it, like the handicap cap, like off to the side a little bit, and he's got a pipe. As an Australian fresh off the boat, I hadn't encountered many true American characters, put it that way. This Beat Detective. Mm-hmm. It's maybe 2003. Drum editing's not very good, but I was good at it at that point, and not many people were. It was still a new thing that people were doing, and people didn't like it, but somebody from a label had called me and said, "You need to go down and edit this record that he's working on." The artist was Johnny Swim. I come in and he intercepts me and he's like, "Look, the drums are here and the bars here. I really don't." He didn't want it done. He didn't want it touched, right? He said, "Can you just like percentage it a little bit just to make him happy, make it a little bit tighter?" And I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll just do my thing and then play it and you just listen and see if you feel it." Dude, I nail that thing to the grid. It's 100%. There's no percentage. I think what happens is they've encountered people who've messed with the shuffle part of the beat. I nail this thing to the grid. I call him in. This thing's going to feel amazing before he walks back in. He doesn't know anything about computers. He doesn't know where the grid, doesn't know anything. He's just a super creative guy. Yeah. He perches himself in the doorway with his pipe and his cap leaning up there, and he closes his eyes. "Okay, hit me." And I played that thing, and it's going through the verse. There's not a lot of action on the drums, hi-hat, a kick on 2 and 4 kind of a thing. And then the chorus kicks in, and it's a shuffle, by the way. Well, I didn't mess with the shuffle. I made the shuffle right. I nailed that thing. And dude, he had a physical reaction, which would be inappropriate in the world of Christian music. And he just started breathing in funny ways. And I said, "Does that feel good to you?" "It's unbelievable. You just moved it like, what was that, 10%, 20%? I said, it feels good. I didn't answer the question.
No, just, we were just talking about that Chicago record. So we're mixing this record, and we had, the way we had the desk set up, was half the desk was inserts. We were trying to find a way that we could open up whatever song at whatever time. You're all digital now for the recalls. Just, well, we were trying to find a way to make an analog thing, but be able to recall it. Every drum kit was the same for the whole record. So we used the left side of the desk to kind of get settings for each, the kick drum overall. And if we were going to change anything, we would do it with plugins and adjust it from there. And then the right side of the desk was summing. We were working on this song. BB Winans was a guest on one of the songs. Phil comes in and he says, same kind of thing. Hey, play it for me. And he would shut his eyes and listen, play the mix and stuff. And he goes, hey, what do you have on BB's voice? I said, well, I've got this, 1176 and an SSL EQ. And he goes, you want to tell me why you have the most aggressive sounding EQ in this room on this beautiful vocal? And I said, I thought it sounded good. And he goes, it doesn't. And he walked out. I was like, wow.
What is Christian music?
Oh, gosh. Sorry.
That's the main start reaction.
I've thought about this a lot, actually. First and foremost, it's a lyric genre. One of the greatest superpower as professionals, and probably anything, is the people who can hold tension. You're making stuff that's supposed to affect the world with Jesus and all this stuff, and then there's this business part of it, and you go, okay, how do you hold both of these and not have one make you jaded about the other, and all those kind of things. But first and foremost, it's a lyric genre, same as country. It's about the story, it's about what it's about. Musically speaking is kind of a secondary thing. And I think when you have an artist who has something to say, a pastoral voice, Christian music will give them permission and success and stuff like that. And then you have others who also make really good art. And I think that's the freaking countries and the people who have the lifelong career when they do both. But Christian music will sometimes let someone who just has something to say succeed. Also, I think Christian music traditionally has been one of the only genres that didn't have its own musical identity. It was pretty derivative of all the other things around it. It wanted just to be a different form of pop with different lyrics, and so it trailed kind of behind. As narrow as the worship music genre is, and as boxed in as you can sometimes feel as a creative, it's tough for me to make it sometimes. It does have some rules. Now it has kind of its own musical rules. Yeah. It's kind of ambient British Oasis and U2 and all those things. But we don't so much hate on other musical genres that also have rules like we do this, but it's a lyric genre. It's about what it's saying. I will say that when I started with Toby, I saw the part of it that made me less jaded about it.
Which is what?
You get the feedback of how this music actually has changed people's life. Right. People headed one direction, and on a dime, here comes this song, and all of a sudden their life is headed in a different one. There's this story about this woman. We were heading to a restaurant after the show. She double parks her car on the sidewalk and gets out. She said, I have to tell you this story. She said, I walked in the arena and I saw this big old security guard with his arms folded. He just looked angry. She said, I walked to my seat. She said, I couldn't get this guy's face out of my mind. And so Toby had just sang this song called Scars. Scars come with living, It's just about how hard life is. And she said, I just felt like I was supposed to go talk to this guy. So she walked to the back and she said, my name's Debbie or whatever. Maybe it's Becky. I said, hello. And he goes, yeah, hold on. What is this? And she goes, well, this is TobyMac, Christian music. And he said, I got this email about this union security gig. And so I took it because I needed the money because I just got out of the hospital. And he rolled up his sleeves and he had tried to kill himself. And so she just right there just led him to the Lord. So it's stuff like that. It's so meaningful. But when you sit back as a creative, and Tasha, my wife, who's an artist and worship leader, she actually tries to do a really good job of sharing those stories with the team and with the musicians and with the songwriters and the people who have helped make the records without getting the feedback of what the stuff you're doing actually is. If it can be tough to know that.
That's actually excellent. I remember saying to Darren Whitehead one day, I really want to do something that changes people's lives, like something that's more effective than being a a tech nerd in a way. I feel like I'm a bricklayer. I'm not laying Christian bricks. It's just bricks, like any man can do it, right? Darren really helped me see it in a different light, but hearing the testimonies at the tail end, we're so separated from it, like I am anyway. At least you're out on the road and you see something.
It's one of my more fearful things about maybe coming off the road one day is just losing that part of it, the feedback and seeing it in real time, what it's doing.
I'm just wondering if there's anything in your life that you would see as that dark moment that, gave way to something else.
I actually kind of hinted on it, like some of the no's.
Yes.
Trying to get those opportunities before maybe you were ready. I always felt like I was good at getting an artist signed. Like, let's make a really creative record that people are going to notice, that stands out. And then kind of feeling like once it got into the system, they wanted to kind of mold it into what was more commercial and whatever. And, hey, can you make it sound like this? Like, I don't know if I'd be all that good at copying so-and-so artist. And also, that's not really what I ever really wanted to do. So when I formed Anthem Lights, got them signed to Provident through Blaine, got them signed to proper management and did all that. Provident was putting me into rights with people to work on this record and things. And they honestly gave me a really good shot to try to be ready to produce that record. And when it came down to it, they're like, hey, we need to have somebody else do this. We need to have kind of the usuals. We got too much money in this to do the thing. And I was really hurt at first and kind of angry and like, well, I formed this and this is my thing and I deserve this. People say that of any age, but especially when you're mid-20s. And it is hard because, there is something I brought to the table, that I had this vision for it, put it together, made the record that got them signed. But like, you do enter into another part where now you have to make this commercial and sell some things. And they may or may not be right about it, but the mindset is, hey, we're about to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in this thing. And thank you for doing it. And so at first I was really upset about it, but I would say like Blaine and I had some really honest but very healthy conversations. He did a really good job of caring for me in the middle of those no's, even though I was kind of butthurt about it for a minute. But then you get a little bit older and you realize I wasn't ready for it. Like that yes could have been detrimental for me.
Yeah, it may have ended you.
Yeah, for me to have gotten the yes before I deserved it and then fallen on my face, publicly or whatever, those things have implications. I've looked back and said, that was the right no. I would have told me no at that point. But also when you just work hard and you just keep showing it up, some people should quit. And I don't mean because they're not good enough. I mean, because some of the people that I know that have quit are so much happier because this is just a job. There's a joy in it and there's something really unique because of how much effort I put into it. You got to provide for your family. And some of the people who have quit are just so much happier. But if you are actually good enough and you keep doing it and you just keep showing up, good stuff tends to happen. Looking back, it was the right no, and it probably paved the way for a lot of good yeses. And my best yeses have been with my wife. I've started to say that too. Like, I'll take the no's to have my best yeses be with my wife. That's been really good.
There is a certain arrogant cockiness that you almost need to have.
Totally.
At the beginning. Because we're not good enough, but we think we are. And if we didn't think we were, we wouldn't go for it. Part of me was like, why can't they make the drums sound like punchy and like, where's the direct mic? Why does that room mic have to be? And of course, One Republic comes out and it's all room mic. And I'm like, that is awful. And of course, they go on to be huge and people just love it, right? But I remember thinking to myself, I could just do a way better job of those drums. I could do a way better job of that mix. But now as I look back in history, I didn't know what I was doing. I had absolutely no clue. My Australian ear heard things in a whole different way, which was a plus and a minus.
Do you like those One Republic records better now? Do you see what they were doing now that you look back, or is it still just not your cup of tea?
When Mabry was on, he mentioned about the in-the-air drums. Probably the most iconic drums of all time, that drum fill.
And one of the most iconic stories of we rewired this console, talkback compressor to compress. You know that, right?
I feel like I've heard that.
Yeah.
It's in my deep memory somewhere.
I think the story, like I said, Mix Magazine or whatever, it's all about those weird ones. And that was one of the weird ones where they turn on the talkback and there's a compressor in the talkback mic of an SSL.
Right.
And they heard it back, and I guess Phil went, "That's it. That's awesome."
LMC1.
And so they overnight rewired it to be able to route a room mic through the compressor, and that's that sound.
That's amazing. Well, connecting One Republic to that drum fill, that was the track I was going on.
Yep.
You know, when Paul mentioned it and he was talking about the sound of that tom fill, I mean, it's a tease. That whole song is a tease. When is that fill going to happen? And they have that sound slowly ramping up. You know, and then the other iconic drum fill is that Yes drum fill, you know, Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the reverse phase thing where, you know, when you've got headphones on and you're listening in the right spot, it explodes your head.
What's the record for you that I have a short list of records, and because I'm tired, I probably won't remember most of them, where you heard it and it was otherworldly. I've never heard anything like that. One of those for me was Iris by Goo Goo Dolls. You know, you have those records that come out that went, oh my gosh, how did they do that? I've never heard anything like that sonically.
Well, I was driving across the Nullarbor Plains, which is the desert between the West and the East in Australia. It's 1,800 miles of listening to that Phil Collins record. It had Doesn't Anybody Stay Together Anymore. These are deep album cuts. I just had that thing on loop. So that album had me. I loved Michael O'Mardian records, his early ones, Adam Again, Jeremiah, Whitehorse. I was a keyboard player. I mean, he's playing a C sharp, a D, and an E as a chord, like close together, like a little cluster in the key of 8.
Yeah.
And this thing worked. I'm like, how did he do that? That shouldn't work, you know? But anyway, back to the drum sound thing. And did I like the One Republic thing? Do I like it now? I appreciate it more now. It's still not my vibe.
Yeah.
Again, Mabry mentioned the Fix You soundtrack, like, you know, referencing that as one of those tracks for him that was so, I get that song. It does have an emotional effect on me, but I really want to fix the mix.
It's not perfect at all.
I feel like it could have been so much better. It's like the Beatles. Like if the Beatles were engineered by today's standards, would it feel as good?
Well, no. Clearly no.
Ted T's going to come on.
I've heard some of his stories about Mute Math and the mixes and just
that's where I'm going.
His distorted drums and things. And he's like, they kept trying to fix it, and it was wrong, you know. Oh, because you were a part of some of that, right?
Yes, that's kind of where I was going.
He told me, yeah.
Before that Mute Math record, hi-hat should be clean, overhead should be clean.
Yep.
Digital distortion is the worst kind of distortion known to man. It should be outlawed, and people should be imprisoned for using it. Well, that record, he's mixing it on a Roland 2408, like digital thing, and he's clipping the crap out of it.
I was at Liberty when that record came out, and it was a epic movement at the school. Everyone listened to that
it was
record.
Fantastic.
So good.
So let's go into more story for you. This lady, what's her name? Tasha. Tell me how she came into your life.
Me and a buddy were exploring doing a female Anthem Lights. And so we did. It was called One Girl Nation. It was also a Provident project. And it kind of descended. I jumped out fairly early, but while I was still working on that record and developing it, I called Tim Davis, who is a friend of mine in LA, did all the music for Glee, among other things. Just wildly talented vocal arranger, producer, actor, all the things. I said, hey, I'm doing this girl pop record and I need a session singer to do the vocal arrangements. I just want to come up with them, and then the girls can kind of learn it, and we'll replace the girls, layer them in and do the thing. But I want to work with the pro on kind of building it out. He said, and I said, it's kind of a Katy Perry thing. And he said, well, I know her background vocalist. And so he introduced me to Tasha. So we had a quick phone conversation. Like I said, I jumped off the project, and so we never ended up working on it, but became Facebook friends the way you do. And a year and a half later, she had moved to Nashville and said, hey, I'm looking for work. I have some demos I need for a pretty girl to come do it in my studio. And so I told her I had some demos, and then asked her to coffee, and then mustered up the nerve to ask her to dinner instead. And so did that whole thing. And then as we were kind of dating and just started creatively making things together, you know, she kind of came here to kind of more write books. She's got 3 books stuff now that she's done, and kind of thought she was done with music. It was actually kind of David Smallbone was right in the middle of that, like just meeting and she wouldn't let me hire someone to clean our house. She's like, well, I can do it better than they can do it. And they never do a good enough job. And we're sitting with David, and she mentioned that. And David said, well, do you want to clean your toilet, or do you want to write some songs that'll change the world? And he goes, hire someone to clean your bathrooms. So we just started making this music, again, not using the rules. If we were just going to do it, she's got a master's in theology. Just what came out was just spiritual stuff.
That makes me so happy. It upsets me when someone who can sing is signed in Christian music and now they're speaking, they're doing all these things. The only thing they're actually really good at is singing. But Tasha has a degree in theology. Oh, my Lord.
I will hear Tasha talk in front of a crowd. Things come out of her mouth that I've never heard her say before, and it just comes out like an original thought in real time. I mean, I tell the same stories over and over again, like in hers, and but when you know someone so well and they get up and I'm hearing her tell a room full of people something I've never heard her say before. How do you do that? She's such a good communicator. And the ministry that she does at her shows is just
that's fantastic.
Really special. John Hartley, she was leading worship at a conference that was at Church of the City. And John came back and said, hey, who are you? Let's have coffee. And so that turned into sharing some music. BC, Brandon Ebel, signed her. And there you go. We've been kind of cranking, and they've given us a lot of freedom to kind of.
So she's still on BC. Mm-hmm. You're the primary producer.
Yeah. It's been an interesting thing to finally have found, like I said, we've got some number ones and stuff now. When you kind of look from a distance and you want to be critical of someone, they've got a sound or everything just sounds like them. All of a sudden you start to understand the pressure to, well, I know it works. And it's something that I like. I did it kind of my way. I wasn't doing it to appease anything over here. I just kind of did it. And I thought it would be something that would resonate with people because it resonated with me. I just cry half the time I'm producing her songs and stuff. And so when it works, it's like, you kind of get when someone kind of develops a sound or something they're known for. Because, on some level, why wouldn't you do it? And if you did it in a way that was authentic to you and felt really and connected, it's doing all the things that it should. So it's been really fun.
Here's a question. I've often wondered this. You're married to an artist and you're producing. Are you touring with her?
Whenever I'm not with Toby, I'll either go out with her and fill a band spot, or I just stay home with the kids. If I had told you 10 years ago that I would be staying home with the kids and letting other people go play music, I would have thought that was nuts. And I kind of love it, when I get to do that.
I mean, that maybe part answers the question I have because, relationally, that could be a problem.
Yeah. And we've had those moments. There's a lot of negotiation in marriage anyway. It's a very legal word, but that's what relationships are. It's just navigating and negotiating. How is this thing going to go down when we come across this problem or that problem? And it was actually Nathan Knuckles and Christy, friends of ours. And when we were going over there for dinner and stuff, Nathan was kind of giving me advice. I can't go to her while she's in the middle of doing something else. Say, hey, can you come cut this vocal real quick? All of a sudden, the whole time she's thinking, you are wasting my time. I'm right in the middle of something else. Why is your thing more important than what I'm doing? So I schedule it just like any other artist. I know that when it's time for her to come up, I'm ready. She's not sitting up there for 10 minutes. It's actually worse with her. Artists will come in, if not quite ready, we'll shoot the breeze for a minute and talk. She's like, hey, you're not ready. I'm going to go back downstairs. I've also learned kind of the way she's really good at producing her own vocal. She wants some time through it, 2 or 3 times just to listen through it. And then she'll say, hey, play it back. Okay, I know what I want to do now. And I just know there's a while where I just keep my mouth shut because I have an inclination to just after the first take go, oh, you should do this. She's like, so I kind of just learned this is what she needs. She wants some time to do it. She wants to hear it. She evaluates. She does it. And at some point it becomes kind of back and forth and we kind of collaborate. And also to know that I can send her on her way before I'm certain that it's done. If an artist is out of town, we have to get it today. It's, D-Day on this schedule. Once I'm done and I've comped up a version, she goes, I don't like that line. And she goes in and just fixes the line that needs fixed. So yes, I very much have a process with this is how we save our marriage by doing this way. She's really patient. And every now and then she'll kind of hey, I just feel like you've been too critical of me. And I feel like I've just been talking about art and about business and about all the things. And she's like, hey, I need my husband right now. Can you tone it down a notch? And We've had bad seasons. It's been really good.
Well, you're doing something right. I have no advice. Well done.
I might
Well
call you
done.
for it anyway at some point.
Don't, dude, I can't. It mystifies me. I think marriage, raising kids, just the whole family dynamic, all that stuff. And then you're working together, not at the accountant's office, not running some retail business, an actual creative and spiritual.
Two things. I think had we not had some success, that would be hard for me. Like if we had been like climbing and scraping and clawing and all of a sudden I'm blaming her and, for it not like whatever, I think that would have been tough. The other thing that I think would be really hard is if she wasn't actually talented. The fact that she is actually extraordinary is a gift because absolutely. I don't know how I would do with the other.
You're giving yourself advice. You're saying to your younger self, what advice are you giving them? What are you going to tell them to be able to get a career, sustain a career?
I think for one, you've got to run your business. You can't be in the business of entertainment and music or whatever you want to call it and not run the business of being a creative. Like you have to enter into that. And some of that's financial planning. And for me, it was kind of real estate and like building something that would actually be my retirement and envisioning what kind of life I wanted. When I had Bible studies with young guys, they'd be like, I want to do music and I tour and like, I want a family and I want kids. And like, well, hold on. You just said two things that could potentially be really in opposition to one another. So how do you build the life that you want 10 years from now? Like, what do you do? How do you build that kind of balance? I think on that level, you've got to have a confidence, but I think people who are built to work hard can work hard without, I have to be the best. It clenches it too tight. And some of the people that I know have the most success, I'm sure there's something deep down that's driving something, but like John Smith and guys like I know, like they're just so laid back and just seem so open-handed. And I think you watch things fall in their lap because I think people really like that. Also the posture of that. I've also read books like Behind the Glass where people get screwed over real hard. And I just don't think this posture helps you.
Right.
So you might get screwed over once and like you can be wise, but it doesn't have to make you desperate or defensive. I think if I could have come back and just been like, man, God's really got it. I can work hard because I work hard, not because I'm striving to make daddy's approval or whatever they think is going on underneath. I don't know if you had this. Strive, burn out, crash. And then you figure out how to live a more balanced life. And you realize, man, more success came after the crash. And I lived my life with way more peace than I did before. Maybe all that striving maybe I would have worked just as hard and things would have come more naturally had I just not done it.
I always finish with a handshake. That's my tradition.
I love it.
Thanks for coming, mate. I appreciate you. There you go. That's it.
There you go.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget, next week, Chris Stevens, Grammy-winning producer of TobyMac, Mandisa, DC Talk, Sanctus Real. It's going to be a great one. Until then, make sure you put something great in your ear holes. See you then.